The trading station orbited a forgettable moon in the outer rim, the kind of place where questions cost more than answers. I had been working security there for 3 cycles, and in that time, I had learned one universal truth. When humans showed up, trouble followed like a shadow follows light. Her name was Kira Venn. She walked into the cantina section like she owned the gravitational field itself, boots thunking against the metal floor with a rhythm that made every patron look up from their drinks. I watched from my post near the eastern airlock, mandibles clicking in what my species called anticipatory concern, though most races just called it nervousness. Kira was tall for a human, maybe 6 feet in their archaic measurement system, with dark hair pulled back in a way that suggested function over fashion. She wore a jacket that had seen better decades, patched in at least 4 places with materials that did not match. Her pants were tucked into boots that looked sturdy enough to kick through a bulkhead. What caught my attention, though, what made my secondary heart start pumping faster, was the way she moved. Humans from peaceful worlds had a certain looseness to their gait, a casual disregard for personal safety that came from never truly being hunted. But Kira? She moved like something that had spent its entire existence being both predator and prey. She was from a Deathworld. I was certain of it. "Barkeep," she said, her voice carrying that odd human accent that always sounded like they were chewing on rocks. "Whatever passes for strong around here, and information on a ship called the Meridian Flux." The bartender, a Quilvan with excellent survival instincts, pointed toward the back corner without saying a word. Smart fellow. I should have stayed at my post. I should have let whatever was about to happen simply happen without my involvement. But 3 cycles of boredom, and a perhaps misguided sense of duty, made me follow her with my eyes as she wove between tables toward a particularly ugly corner of the cantina. Sitting there, surrounded by what could generously be called hired muscle, was Drax Horveen. Oh, wonderful! Just wonderful! Drax was a Keelian, which meant he stood roughly 8 feet tall when he bothered to stand, had 4 arms that could crush Duraplast, and possessed exactly 0% of the common sense his species was supposedly famous for. He ran contraband through this sector, and he did not appreciate questions about his business. I activated my communicator, quietly alerting the station commander that we might need medical standing by, or possibly a cleaning crew. With humans, it was always hard to predict which. "You Horveen?" Kira asked, stopping a calculated 3 meters from his table. Close enough to talk, far enough to react. "Interesting." "Who is asking?" Drax rumbled, his translator unit giving his words a bass tone that rattled glasses on nearby tables. "Someone who does not care about your name," Kira replied, and I detected what humans called sarcasm dripping from every syllable. "I am looking for information about the Meridian Flux. It docked here 2 weeks ago. You run the port manifests. I know you know where it went." Drax's lips pulled back, revealing teeth designed for tearing meat from bone. His species was carnivorous, aggressive, and deeply territorial. They did not respond well to demands. "Little human," he said slowly, "you are making assumptions about my patience. It is very thin today." "What a coincidence," Kira smiled, and there was absolutely nothing friendly in that expression. "Mine snapped about 3 systems ago." One of Drax's companions, a Reuven mercenary with more scars than sense, laughed. "Boss, you want me to throw the monkey out the airlock?" The temperature in the cantina seemed to drop several degrees. Every human I had ever met hated being compared to their evolutionary ancestors. It was, as they said in their colorful language, a reliable way to start a fight. But Kira just kept smiling. "You could try," she said conversationally. "But here is the thing about humans from worlds like mine. We have this quirk, this funny little evolutionary advantage. See, when someone threatens us, our brains do not tell us to run. They do not tell us to freeze. They tell us to calculate exactly how much force is required to end the threat permanently." The Reuven reached for the plasma cutter on his belt. Kira's hand moved so fast I almost missed it. One moment her arms were loose at her sides, the next she had drawn a compact blaster from somewhere under her jacket and placed a shot exactly 3 centimeters to the left of the mercenary's head. The bolt scorched the wall panel, and the smell of ozone filled the air. Every weapon in the cantina suddenly pointed at someone else. It was beautiful chaos, if chaos could be considered beautiful by anyone with functioning survival instincts. "Next one goes through something vital," Kira said calmly, as if she had not just initiated what would probably become a firefight that I would have to write a report about for the next week. "I am not here to kill anyone. I am here for information. The meridian flux. Where did it go?" Drax stared at her with all 4 of his primary eyes. Then, impossibly, he started laughing. "You have spine, human. I respect spine." He waved his lower arms in a gesture that his species used to indicate grudging admiration. But respect does not buy information. Credits do. 20,000 standard, and I tell you what I know. "I have 5,000, Kira countered. "Then you have a problem." She holstered her blaster in a smooth motion that suggested countless hours of practice. "Okay, how about this instead? You tell me what I want to know, and I do not inform the Galactic Trade Commission that you have been running unregistered biosamples through this station. I noticed 3 containers marked as agricultural equipment that were radiating in the gamma spectrum. Want to guess what the GTC does to smugglers running hot cargo through civilian stations?" My mandibles clicked rapidly. She had noticed that? I had been monitoring the cargo manifests for 3 cycles and never spotted anything unusual. How had she identified contaminated containers just by walking through the station? Drax's expression shifted from amusement to calculation. "You are bluffing." Dock 7, Container Stack 42, 3rd unit from the bottom. Has a Greytech Industries label, but the serial number is 16 digits when Greytech only uses 14. It is a fake and a bad one. The radiation signature matches Corvaxian medical waste, which sells for premium prices on the black market to certain parties. I am guessing you are moving it for someone who does not want the authorities to know their research facilities are dumping hazardous materials instead of processing them properly. The silence that followed could have been weaponized. I checked my threat assessment protocols, mentally running through the station's security procedures for armed conflicts. This was going to require forms. So many forms. "You could turn me in," Drax said slowly, "but then you get nothing." "True," Kira agreed, "or you give me the information and we both walk away with what we want. I get my lead, you keep running your extremely questionable business operations, and nobody has to explain to the station authorities why there are bodies everywhere. Personally, I am tired. I have been on 4 different stations this month. I would really prefer not to add a 5th because I had to shoot my way off this one." Drax studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured with his upper left arm. The meridian flux went to the Kessler Belt, mining Sector 9. They were taking on supplies for a long-haul run. Captain was Tivian, a Sarathi. Paranoid type. Paid extra for privacy on his manifest filings. What was he hauling? Did not ask, do not care. He paid in advance, I processed his docking. That is the extent of my knowledge. Kira nodded once, sharp and precise. Appreciate it. She turned and walked back through the cantina, every eye following her until she disappeared through the main entrance. The weapons slowly lowered. The tension in the room dropped from potentially lethal to merely dangerously high. I made a command decision and left my post, following her into the corridor beyond. "Human!" I called out, my translator rendering my natural clicking speech into something approximating galactic common. "Wait, please!" She stopped, hand resting casually near her blaster. "If you are station security, I did not start that fight." "Technically accurate," I conceded. "However, you did discharge a weapon in a civilian area, which violates Station Ordinance 14.7. Are you going to arrest me?" I considered the question, considered the fact that she had identified smuggled materials I had somehow missed, considered that she was clearly chasing something important enough to risk confrontation with Drax Horveen, considered that my job was mind-numbingly boring, and perhaps I wanted just a taste of something different. "No," I said, "but I am going to ask what you are really looking for. The Meridian Flux is a small cargo vessel, nothing special. But you are asking questions like, it is the most important ship in the sector. Why?" Kira studied me with eyes that seemed to calculate the threat level I represented in approximately 0.5 seconds. Then she sighed. "The Meridian Flux picked up cargo from my homeworld 3 months ago. Medical supplies, supposedly, except someone switched the containers before they left orbit. What actually went onto that ship? Embryonic samples. Genetic material from some of the most dangerous predators on my planet. Someone is trying to build weapons, and they are using my world's biology to do it." My antennae went rigid with shock. That is insanely illegal. No argument here. If weaponized genetic material from a Deathworld gets into the wrong hands, it could devastate ecosystems across multiple systems. Still not arguing. "You should report this to the proper authorities." Kira laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I did. Know what they told me? Insufficient evidence. Not enough jurisdiction. Please file a formal complaint and wait 6 to 8 months for processing. By then, whatever is being planned will already be in motion. So I decided to handle it myself." "By yourself? That seems strategically unsound." "Welcome to my life. It is all strategically unsound decisions held together with spite and poor impulse control." Despite my better judgment, I found myself respecting her approach. The Kessler Belt is dangerous. Mining sectors attract the worst kinds of operators. If you go there alone, you probably will not return. "Probably not," she agreed cheerfully. "But I am going anyway." "That is completely irrational." "Lady, where I come from, being irrational is how you survive Tuesday. I made a decision that I would probably regret, possibly sooner rather than later." "I am coming with you." She blinked. "What?" 3 cycles I have been stationed here. 3 cycles of monitoring cargo manifests and breaking up fights between drunk miners. I am bored, I am capable, and apparently I am bad at my job, since I missed radioactive containers sitting in our own dock. Consider this professional development. Kira studied me for several long seconds. Then she smiled, and this time there was actual warmth in it. "What is your name, security officer?" "Vrix Talamon," I said. "I am a Nethic, 3rd caste, trained in close-quarters combat and tactical assessment. I also have piloting certifications for 17 classes of small vessels." "Useful. I am Kira Venn, 2nd-generation colonial from Thresh Three, certified in absolutely nothing but really good at not dying. Fair warning, people who travel with me tend to end up in situations that require split-second decisions and questionable ethics." I am willing to accept those terms. Then welcome aboard the worst decision you will make all cycle. We leave in 2 hours. Think you can get us cleared for departure without anyone asking awkward questions? I clicked my mandibles in what translated roughly to confident affirmation. I am security. I can authorize my own transport as part of an ongoing investigation. Into what? Potential smuggling operations, I said smoothly. I am investigating suspicious radiation signatures reported by an anonymous source. You are lying to your superiors. Technically, I am pursuing a legitimate security concern. The fact that it aligns with your goals is merely convenient. Kira's grin widened. I like you already, Vrix. This is either the start of a beautiful partnership, or we are both going to die horribly. Honestly, even odds at this point. 2 hours later, we were strapped into a modified cargo runner, pulling away from the station with clearance codes that I had absolutely stretched the definition of legitimate authority to acquire. Kira sat in the co-pilot seat, running pre-flight checks with the ease of someone who had spent significant time in spacecraft. So, she said conversationally as the station shrank behind us, want to hear about the time I had to fight off a pack of razor cats using only a mining torch and what I am pretty sure was expired food rations? Is this relevant to our current situation? No, but we have 6 hours until we reach the Kessler Belt, and I get talkative when I am nervous. You are nervous? You threatened a notorious smuggler with barely a tactical advantage. That was different. That was calculated aggression. This is flying into unknown danger with someone I met 30 minutes ago. Totally reasonable to be nervous. Despite everything, despite every logical protocol screaming that I was making a terrible decision, I found myself settling into the co-pilot seat with something that might have been anticipation. Tell me about the razor cats, I said. And as the stars stretched past our viewport and we accelerated toward the Kessler Belt, Kira Venn began to talk, and I began to understand exactly why humans from Deathworlds were considered the galaxy's most unpredictable variable. The adventure, I realized, was just beginning, and somehow, against all probability, I was looking forward to it. The Kessler Belt looked exactly like every mining sector I had ever seen, which is to say it looked like someone had taken a perfectly good asteroid field and decided to make it actively hostile to life. Debris floated in chaotic patterns, old mining equipment drifted like mechanical ghosts, and the few operational stations glowed with the sickly yellow light of cheap fusion reactors. Charming, Kira muttered, adjusting our trajectory to avoid a chunk of abandoned drilling platform. Really sells the whole frontier vibe. Mining Sector 9 should be approximately 40,000 kilometers ahead, I reported, checking the navigation console, though I am detecting unusual energy signatures from that direction. Define unusual. Multiple ship drives in standby mode, at least 8 vessels, which is significant for a sector this remote. Also, one of those signatures is military grade. Kira's hands tightened on the controls. Military? Which faction? Cannot determine from this distance. But whoever they are trying to mask their presence. Not very successfully, I might add. Okay. She exhaled slowly, and I watched her shift into what I was beginning to recognize as combat mode. Her posture changed, her breathing steadied, and that dangerous smile crept back onto her face. Change of plans. We go in quiet, no active sensors, minimal engine burn. If someone is running a military operation out here, I want to see them before they see us. I adjusted our approach vector, killing the main drive and switching to maneuvering thrusters. We drifted into the debris field like just another piece of forgotten equipment, silent and unremarkable. 20 minutes of nerve-wracking navigation brought us close enough to visual range. What I saw made my secondary hearts skip several beats. The station was old, probably dating back to the initial colonization wave a century ago, but someone had retrofitted it extensively. New docking arms extended from the central hub like metal tentacles. Defense platforms bristled with weapons that were definitely not standard civilian equipment. And docked at the primary airlock was a ship I recognized from security briefings. "That is a Corvaxian military transport," I said quietly. "The same species whose medical waste Drax was smuggling." "Not a coincidence," Kira replied grimly. "Someone high up in their government is running this operation. The waste was probably cover, a way to move biological materials without raising flags." "But why here? Why this location?" "Because nobody looks in garbage piles. This sector is officially abandoned, right? Failed mining operation, depleted resources, not worth maintaining. Perfect place for illegal research." She was right, and I hated how much sense it made. "So what do? We cannot exactly knock on the door and ask politely." "No." Kira pulled up the station schematics on our console, fingers dancing across the controls. "But stations this old all have the same basic design. Emergency maintenance tunnels, backup life support conduits, places where workers could access critical systems without going through main corridors. If I were hiding something illegal, I would stick it in the sections farthest from normal traffic." "The lower decks," I realized. "Near the reactor core." "Exactly. Nobody goes down there unless something breaks. We get in through a maintenance hatch, make our way to the research section, get evidence of what they are doing, and get out before anyone notices." That plan has approximately 47 points where catastrophic failure could occur. "Yeah, but do you have a better one?" I did not. "We will need environment suits. If we breach hull integrity or encounter areas with compromised life support, we will need protection." "Good thinking. Also weapons. Definitely weapons." We spent the next hour preparing, checking equipment with the thoroughness of people who understood that overlooking a single detail could mean death. Kira moved with practiced efficiency, and I found myself wondering exactly how many times she had done something like this before. "So," I said, testing the seals on my environment suit, "on your world, is this considered normal behavior? Breaking into illegal research facilities?" She laughed, but the sound was darker than before. "No. Most people on Thresh 3 are too busy surviving the local wildlife to worry about galactic conspiracies. But my family, we were part of the colonial security forces. I grew up learning that sometimes the official channels do not work fast enough, and if you want justice, you have to take it yourself." "That sounds lonely." "It is." She checked her blaster, then added 2 more weapons to her belt. "But it is also necessary. Someone has to stand between the predators and the prey. Might as well be someone who knows how to fight." We suited up and launched ourselves toward the station in a small maneuvering pod, using debris as cover. The maintenance hatch Kira had identified was on the station's dark side, away from the docked ships and active sections. Getting it open required some creative application of my security override codes, which technically I should not have had access to, and which technically probably stopped being valid the moment we left our original station. But either the universe was feeling generous, or the Corvaxians were overconfident, because the hatch cycled open with only minimal complaining from ancient hydraulics. We slipped inside. The maintenance tunnel was cramped, dark, and smelled like recycled air that had been recycled too many times. Emergency lighting cast everything in shades of red, and the walls were covered in that universal language of neglect that said nobody had been here in years. "This way," Kira whispered, consulting a handheld scanner. Biosignatures 3 levels down, concentrated in what used to be a processing facility. We moved carefully, weapons ready, every sense alert for signs of patrol or security systems. But the tunnels remained empty, just us and the distant hum of the station's reactor. It took 30 minutes to reach the lower levels. 30 minutes of climbing through access shafts and crawling through service ducts designed for maintenance drones rather than living beings. By the time we emerged into a proper corridor, my suit was scuffed, and my patience was wearing thin. Then we heard the screaming. It was not constant. It came in bursts, raw and agonized, the sound of something in terrible pain. Human vocal. Chords, I realized. Someone was being hurt badly. Kira's expression went flat and cold. Move! We ran through corridors that grew increasingly clean and modern, past doors marked with biohazard symbols and warning signs in 6 languages. The screaming grew louder, more desperate, until we reached a door marked Research Lab 7. Kira did not hesitate. She overrode the lock with a bypass tool that looked distinctly illegal, and we burst through the door with weapons raised. The laboratory was horrifying. Containment cells lined both walls, each holding creatures I recognized from xenobiology reports. Predators from dozens of Deathworlds, including several from Kira's home planet. But these were not natural specimens. They had been altered, enhanced, turned into something worse. In the center of the room, strapped to a medical table, was a human. Young, maybe 20 standard years, covered in injection marks and surgical scars. A Korvaxian scientist stood over him, holding a device that crackled with electrical current. Compatibility test 14, the scientist was saying into a recorder. Subject continues to reject the hybrid genetic structure. Increasing pain stimulus to measure stress response. He activated the device again, and the human screamed. Kira shot him. The blast took the scientist in the shoulder, spinning him away from the table. He crashed into an equipment rack, clutching his wound and staring at us with 3 of his 6 eyes wide with shock. "What are you doing?" he shrieked. "This is classified research. You cannot be here." "Funny thing about classified research," Kira said, her voice colder than stellar void. "When it involves torturing people, the classification stops mattering." She moved to the medical table, quickly releasing the restraints. The young human was barely conscious, his breathing shallow and labored. "Hey, stay with me. We are getting you out." "More subjects," he mumbled. "Storage bay, deck 3, at least 20 more." My antennae vibrated with horror. 20? They have been taking humans for experiments? "Not just humans," the scientist said, apparently deciding cooperation was preferable to bleeding out. "Multiple species. The Korvaxian military wants bioweapons that can adapt to any environment. Deathworld predators bonded with sentient hosts. Imagine soldiers with the strength of a ridge bear and the intelligence of a tactician. Imagine being insane enough to think that is a good idea," Kira snapped. She turned to me. "Brix, can you carry him?" "Yes, but we cannot extract 20 prisoners through maintenance tunnels." "No." She looked around the lab, her expression calculating. "But we can make sure nobody ever does this again. What is the station's main power source?" "Fusion reactor, standard colonial model. It should be shielded and stable." "Should be. But if someone were to, say, overload the containment fields and disable the safety protocols?" She smiled that dangerous smile. "How big would the explosion be?" "Large enough to destroy the station and anything docked to it. Kira, that is mass murder." "It is justice. These people are torturing prisoners, creating biological weapons, and operating completely outside any legal framework. We report this, It gets buried under bureaucracy and plausible deniability. We destroy the evidence, we save the prisoners, and we make sure this particular nightmare ends tonight. I wanted to argue. Every regulation I had ever learned said this was wrong, that we should work through proper channels, that vigilante action created more problems than it solved. But looking at the human on the table, at the creatures in the cages, at the horror of what was happening here, I found that I did not care about regulations anymore. The reactor controls are 2 levels down, I said. I can access them from the engineering terminal. Give me 10 minutes. You have 8. After that, I am starting the evacuation, whether you are done or not. I ran. The engineering section was mercifully empty, the control systems exactly where my training said they would be. Overriding the safety protocols was surprisingly easy once I abandoned the notion that I was acting legally. The reactor began its countdown to catastrophic failure, with what I considered deeply inappropriate cheerfulness from the computer system. I made it back to the lab in 6 minutes, my lungs burning and my secondary hearts working overtime. Kira had gathered 7 more prisoners, all in various states of injury and trauma. She had also apparently convinced the scientist to unlock the prisoner storage, possibly by shooting him in the other shoulder. "Everybody move!" she shouted. "We have 4 minutes until this place becomes a very bright, very brief star." Getting 11 people, most of them injured, through the station and into our ship should have been impossible. But apparently, when you tell people the alternative is explosive decompression, they find reserves of speed they did not know they possessed. We were sealing the airlock when the station alarms began to wail. Someone had finally noticed us, but by then it was far too late for anyone except us. Our ship broke away from the station just as the reactor went critical. The explosion lit up the Kessler belt like a miniature sun, debris and fire expanding in a sphere that consumed everything within range. The Korvaxian military transport tried to run. It did not make it far enough. In the aftermath, as we tended to wounds and tried to calm traumatized prisoners, Kira sat in the pilot seat and stared at the expanding debris field. "You did the right thing," I said quietly. "Did I? I just killed probably 100 people without trial, without due process. I am not sure that qualifies as right. They were creating weapons designed to kill millions. You stopped them. Sometimes that is all we can do." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded, just once. "We need to get these people medical attention, and then we need to find out how high up this goes. The Korvaxians did not fund this alone. Someone else is involved." "Another mission?" "Another mission. You still in?" I looked at the rescued prisoners, thought about the regulations I had broken, considered the report I would never be able to file that would adequately explain tonight's events. Then I clicked my mandibles in agreement. "I am in. Someone needs to make sure you do not blow up the entire sector." Kira laughed, real and genuine this time. "No promises, but I appreciate the supervision." As we set course for the nearest medical station, leaving behind the wreckage of the research facility, I realized something. For 3 cycles I had been looking for purpose, for something that mattered beyond monitoring cargo manifests and breaking up bar fights. I had found it, in the most unlikely place possible, next to a human from a Deathworld who fought impossible odds with nothing but determination and questionable planning skills. The galaxy was full of predators, but sometimes, just sometimes, the prey fought back. And when they did, they fought with everything they had. The adventure was not over. It was just beginning. But for tonight, we had won. And sometimes that was enough.